welcome to new friends and existing friends. Good to see some of you back on screen again, so lovely to see you. I don't know why I'm going to put my posh voice on or talk real posh in this bit, just because I thought it was recorded. I ought to, but that's not my style, John. My style is really informal, so I'm going to go back to being normal. Welcome, John. I hope you find some of this useful. Certainly, I know a couple of colleagues on the line have used the CSO services throughout the pandemic, so let's hope there's something useful for yourself here. So basically what we wanted to do is, we haven't been together for a little while, and we know that throughout the pandemic we put these in regularly, just as keep in touch meetings, really and truly, to make sure that everybody was doing okay, that we could talk through any challenges or any news that you wanted to share, any experiences that you'd had, that we can see whether there's some experience across the network that actually others have resolved or solved or had the same problems. It's also a really useful conduit for ourselves as the community support organisation to be able to relay some of the information that we gather from these meetings back up to county, so they get a feel for what's happening down on the ground, and hopefully influence some of their practices and some of their support mechanisms that come our way. So just for John's benefit, the CSO emerged out of North Yorkshire County Council coming across to the voluntary sector to say, what can you do in response to the pandemic, and could we give you a small pot of money that would allow you to facilitate the coordination of volunteers, shopping, any requests that county would have, basically anything that they required doing on the ground with regards to the pandemic, could they use us as a conduit. So of course myself and Claire Hall both said yes, as there's two organisations that are quite well experienced in community development and volunteer development in Ryedale. So I'm from Scarborough and Ryedale Carers Resource, and Claire, I'll let Claire introduce herself in a moment, is from Ryedale Carers Support. So as two organisations, we came together right at the beginning to sort of say, yeah, let's have a look at what we can do support-wise for the pandemic. Right at the very beginning, we met Steve and Jack, who had set up the mutual aid networks, and started to work closely with them. So very much we brought together our practice right the way from the beginning. And I think now we're in lockdown 2, all the hard work that's been going on over the last 8 months between us as a collaborative is really paying off, because lockdown 2 so far, touch wood, has been quite smooth. I know we're a long way off it being over, and we're all in place until the end of March as a network for you to tap into. I've got sort of like a semi-script that I know that I want to check against, that I'm actually reminding myself to keep saying, so apologies if I look left just to read my phone while I'm talking. But the full team of the CSO is on screen with you at this present moment in time. So we've got myself, who leads up, who heads up sort of the strategic lead for county. So I get the wonderful job of talking to Paddy most days to be able to see what county are doing and what the local and district authority is doing. So I perform that sort of role. Di, would you like to introduce yourself and just explain what your role is at the moment?
Yes, hello everybody. I think most people know me from these calls anyway, when I was involved in the volunteer network, but I'm also now working with Claire with the CSO, and I'm taking most of the calls as they come in now and dealing with them. So I've sort of got double hat on this call, but that's my principal day job at the moment. So I'm the person that you will usually get if you ring the CSO number.
Brilliant, thank you. And Claire?
I am Claire Hall. I'm Chief Officer of Ryedale Care Support. So before COVID, Care Support we have about 130 volunteers who sit with a person being cared for to give the carer a break, or they'll sit with someone who's lonely and isolated, or visit someone who's lonely and isolated as a friend. And then since the CSO was formed, we got together with Claire at Scarborough Ryedale Carers Resource, and about 140 volunteers from the network came across to us who had been DBS checked, and they were our core helpers for doing shopping and med collections during the initial lockdown. And now, as we go forward into second lockdown, we responded. So Di will get the calls, and our volunteers will respond with whatever help's needed. But we want to be very much more sort of linked in with the mutual aid networks so that we can work together, but also be supportive if you need us to be, with things like safeguarding or some of the more complex needs when there's a family crisis or something like that. So that, in a nutshell, is what we do at Ryedale Community Support.
Brilliant, thank you. Steve, did you want to introduce yourself as well? Sorry, as part of, I noticed in the chat you'd put the A team, but clearly the A team has to include you.
No, the A team is the CSO at the moment. John, just to let you know, we're hosting this meeting is by Community Smart, which is a non-profit community interest company that's been born out of the Ryedale Volunteer Network. Currently, we are doing the community kitchens. We're bringing food aid into the area, and also coordinating these meetings, plus a few other initiatives with local supermarkets as well. So it just gives you a rough idea of exactly who we are, so you get an understanding of where we're all coming from.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, and so most of that will sound as if it's sort of duplication of what you're doing, John, and very much your initial sort of sentiment was that we're managing absolutely super well in our own community and things like that is music to our ears. That's exactly what we hope would happen, and certainly what Shirl and Sarah and Nicole, everybody will have been doing is looking after their own sort of community bubble, if you like, and we saw a tremendous, absolutely tremendous, well, Steve has on record sort of 600 plus volunteers who came together to say, we've got this, don't worry, Ryedale residents, we've got your back, sort of thing, and it's been working absolutely tremendously well. I think the value that we add, or the difference that we have added to colleagues on the call and many of the other organisers, as they lovingly became known, is that the Community Support Organisation has within its sort of gift a few extra tricks, if it likes, for supporting people who you may come across. So very definitely Claire alluded to the fact that we've been used quite a lot over the past, that when there is any sniff or whiff or expectation that there is a safeguarding or a situation where somebody needed to be safeguarded, then we were there at the end of the line to sort of manage and support you through a safeguarding situation. So certainly sort of the benefit of that central number being there for yourselves is that you can ring at any time to be able to sort of say, got this sort of tricky one, Claire, what do you think? And many of the network organisers have used us in that capacity. But also we have at our gift a number of finances that we can deploy at any time should you find a family who are financially in extreme hardship or are having to isolate and they can't access their finances, or the periods of unemployment, etc. We have a number of opportunities to tap quite quickly into some financial resources for those families. So again, if that's what you come across within the community support that you're doing, you know, you can ring us and we can pick them up at that point and sort of work through those finances with them. I think what Di spends her day job doing at the moment is what we lovingly term as triage. It sounds very medical, clearly it's not. So if somebody rings in, they're obviously ringing in for a short-term need. So the vast majority of people will ring us and say, really struggling with food. Yeah, full stop, I haven't got any. Can we have some today? So the immediate need is for us to make sure that they are shored up with a food aid, sort of develop a package. And that might be that we're going to the food bank. It might be that we're going to Community Smart for some emergency aid. It might be that we're buying it ourselves and taking it in there. Or it might be that it just so happens that that's the day of Molten Free Fridge. Yeah, so we're actually pointing people to go down to Free Fridge. We also have direct access and usually can make sure that we secure some free meals through Community Smart's Community Kitchen, etc. So we look at what is the immediate need, but then on that triage call, we will say, actually, what's the underlying thing here? What is the thing that will help somebody over the next 2 to 3 weeks get themselves back on their feet or through that moment of crisis? Or is there a longer term need? And at which point we have access and can give confidence to people who need to access statutory services. So we do have fast track sort of access into some of those statutory services that we need to get people up to. And often that's a scary thing. People don't want to be involved in statutory services. Oh, don't worry about it, I'll manage, I'll come back, we'll go to the food bank next week. But actually it's our job, and I think it's my job, Claire's and Di's, to reassure people that actually gaining support at this moment in time is what hundreds and thousands of people will be doing nationally. And it's a moment in time, and that support network is there for us to help people access it. So very much we are, we hope we're the confidence givers, if you like, to be able to get people the right support at the right time. We by no means are duplicating the work that you guys are doing. We value it, and we could not have said that Ryedale would have got through this first lockdown as successfully. I know there will be a number of very sad instances across calling that a success, but I think it has been a success story in Ryedale in terms of being able to make sure that people have been well fed when they've needed it, quickly, easily, but also that we have had thousands and thousands of hours of friendship calls and befriending calls that have meant that people's loneliness and isolation hasn't been quite as challenging as it could have been. Which is another thing that connecting with us, John, your client, your residents don't need to. You can do this on their behalf, obviously with their consent. Can come to us and say, well, Mrs. Smith, she's struggling, she doesn't have anybody really to talk to. And we have access to quite an extensive telephone and doorstep befriending service, which means that we can support people through some of those more lonely times. On this afternoon's call, we had a wonderful, wonderful example of where one of the organisers just went, well, actually, one of our residents is struggling with books. Yeah, she would absolutely love books. And within a heartbeat, 4 or 5 people that were on the screen went, don't worry about that. There's the library service here and I can take her some books up. And it really was that we could find in real time some very quick solutions to just one person's challenge, if you like. So all those sort of things, it's not just the sort of seen as the statutory response. This is about a community response. So it isn't all form filling and formal sort of referrals up and down the chain, if you like. It is about saying, actually, how can we make those solutions happen today for somebody? Yeah. Really, really proud that Claire, certainly through the first lockdown when we were taking, as you will have been taking many, many calls, Claire and I were taking probably around 30, 35 calls a day into the central number. I'm really proud that within 24 hours, the sort of whole solution was put in place for people. So it's not that anybody is parked and not on a number. Steve's just flashed into the chat that I'm to promote the number. And while I'm talking, I know Di will get that up for me, because I have absolutely no idea how to quote that efficiently, just like that. I don't even know my own telephone number that well, Steve. But we did ask that the organisers this lockdown actually consider using more than they have done before the central number to offer out to residents. So we've created a postcard that many of the organisers have. So if you haven't had those postcards, please contact Di and she will get them across to you. And they're very simple postcards, just sum up what we do as a CSO. And we would like those in as many households and public places as possible, purely because they're an additional number for somebody. So if they can't get you, John, they know they can get somebody else. Yeah. Really and truly, we still welcome organisers using their own numbers. There's a space on the back of the postcards to be able to write your numbers in. So it's certainly not saying one number and one number only. But we do hope that for some organisers who were having as many calls as we were in some of the sort of the early days, that this will provide them with the support for that front end. Yeah. And we will rely on you guys to support the back end, which is that if we call you and say, Anne, can you do us a favour? We need food delivering to X. Here's the money or here's the resources to do it. Can you get somebody to it? Anne will be the one that then can do that back end work for us. Don't worry, Claire, I know 3 people who can do that. I'll get onto it straight away, because that's always what Anne says. Don't worry, Claire, I can get onto it. Do it straight away, which has been absolutely amazing. But we've had lots and lots of fantastic examples. We've had cake bakers, so Sarah's on, and she's been absolutely phenomenal when times were really hard, getting cakes sorted for us into the NHS and all sorts of things. And I think what's been absolutely magic is that as a set of organisers and as us coming from the voluntary sector, we came together so very, very strongly to respond. We know now that we are going to go into a period that is going to be a little bit harder than it was over the summer. We know that winter will add quite a difficult lens on the whole COVID crisis. There's certainly a difficult lens on isolation and loneliness. So at this moment in time, we wanted to bring the organisers together to start a new set of communications with you to say, we're in it together again, that we're moving forward and that we really want to do that together. And we're here to stay for 6 months. So let's make sure that we do that effectively together. Di and Claire, did you want to add anything into that?
I think the only other thing I would say, Claire, is that I think sometimes I really admire all the work that everybody's been doing within their little communities, but some of the conversations I've had since I've been doing this role have been, well, I called you because however much I love my little community, there are things that I wouldn't necessarily want to share with my neighbour. For obvious reasons, really, because sometimes some of the conversations that we're having are quite sensitive and quite difficult when you dig a little bit past, what as Claire said, when you dig past that initial need for possibly food aid. There are other issues that people perhaps wouldn't want to discuss with somebody within their own community, particularly if it's a small community. And so I think some of those calls, you know, referring those on to us, or just saying, why don't you ring this number and have a conversation with Guy instead? I think those sort of things can also make a big difference to people's lives. And, you know, some of the things I've been talking about have been really quite complex on some occasions. And so I think it's also that opportunity. So just having that number to hand, which I put in the chat box now, I think I should have it on a piece of paper and just flash it in every meeting I'm in at the moment.
Can you read it out,
I think that's there. I think that's really helpful. So
will you just read it out for the call?
Yeah, by all means. Yeah, it's 07922 421 326, and that's the CSO helpline.
That's brilliant. Claire, would you want to add anything?
I don't think so, except that Ryedale Care Support with the volunteers, you know, as I said before, we're here and we can do the far-flung areas of Ryedale, whereas I think the help groups are more, the mutual aid groups are more focused around villages, but we cover the remoter farms and areas like that as well. Brilliant.
If Paddy were on this call, so Paddy Chandler from North Yorkshire County Council, he would want me to remind everybody that each mutual aid group or each parish council has within their gift to apply to stronger communities for some funding. So if you have a particular desire to all of a sudden have a bookshop in your bus stop or develop something new and different within your community, that there are funds to actually help you do that. They were very easily accessible in the early part of COVID. They were up to £500. They then very optimistically over the summer, county gave us the gift of calling them Restore and Recover, and they went up to £1,000 because we were kind of like very optimistic that we were maybe moving into a response and recovery phase. They've just converted those back again to a very much a COVID emergency response sort of like budgets for everybody, still up to £1,000, and any mutual aid group can apply. Oh, sorry, Steve.
I'm just wondering, any mutual aid group, or would the parish council be able to apply?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Mutual aid groups, parish councils, town councils, community groups. And he would want me to stand here and sit here in this dim lighting that's making me look actually good. Actually, my complexion doesn't look bad. To promote the fact that those grants are there and they are to be used. So we can support people to secure those. We can help you write if you don't feel confident to write and you've got some cracking ideas. But they are there. So there's lots of opportunities like that coming down. We're just about to get delivery from North Yorkshire Sport, a whole load of activity packs. So we want to offer those to mutual aid groups to say, actually, if you would like some activity packs to go into homes, we're getting those from North Yorkshire Support. White Rose are giving us some winter and warm packs. I'm not quite sure what's going to be in those yet, but you know, those are the type of things that are given to us centrally, and we can turn around and say, if you have a family in need where you think this pack might be really helpful as a present, a treat, an opportunity just to have something different coming into the home, then, you know, give us a shout. So all of those we can post up on the Community Smart sort of website to say, this has come in this week, does anybody fancy it? You can just contact us and we'll sort things out. So I think there's lots of mutual benefits for being together, and the biggest benefit for me from being connected to all of you is that I get the proper message from the ground. So it's okay me sort of sat here behind my desk coordinating all sorts of different things, but it's invaluable when, you know, Cheryl will ring me and say, you know, this is happening in our community, is there something we can work on together with this? Or and we'll say, well, the general feeling in Malton is, yeah, and actually having that collective intelligence is so valuable for us to be able to make sure the response is right and appropriate. That's me being proper for a whole, what, whole 20 minutes nearly.
No, I think that was really useful, actually, and I'm going to leave the recording on just for a second and just see if the questions from some of the other organisers and questions from people in general before we switch it off. But I thought that was really useful, and I'm going to refer back to John here because John is the newbie in the room. Did you find that useful, John?
Yeah, I did. Very useful. Actually, I did come to attend the initial meeting, which was obviously some time ago, but the tele-befriending service, because how do you access that? Is that on that same CSO helpline number?
Yes, certainly. If you put a call through to Di would take that. She would, and sometimes those calls come in from organisers rather than from individuals. They'll say, you know, I've got permission for, you know, to pass you Mrs. Smith's sort of telephone number. Would you give her a ring? This is roughly where she's at. She's expecting your call. So sometimes they come in from the organisers. Yeah, and we have. We do train people to be telephone befrienders, so it's not we're just going to connect her with a random person that said that they would love to volunteer and chat. Sort of our telephone befrienders do go through a little bit of training so we can make sure that they understand boundaries and safeguarding and everything like that. But basically it's about saying, and we've seen the impact tenfold with many households, just the fact that somebody regularly says, Tuesday morning, let's get a cup of coffee, let's have a sit down and let's just have a chat. Yeah, even if it's over the telephone, it has been an absolute lifeline for people. And I know, Claire, you do a lot of work with us and for us on telephone befriending. So maybe you want to contribute.
You've said most of it, Claire, except we do have a large bank of volunteers who are happy to be telephone befrienders, and we would ring the person once you'd phoned the helpline with their details. We'd phone the person, have a chat about just who they are and just sort of get to know them a bit, and then let them know who their volunteer would be that they would be phoning, so that they would know they'd expect the phone call from a designated volunteer, and then it's the same volunteer each time that rings them.
Yeah.
And it can stop as soon as it starts, John. So if somebody goes, oh no, I don't think I like that, yeah, it can stop as soon as it starts.
Right. No, that's good to know. Anyway, I don't want you to spend your time. I mean, you've done a fantastic job, you ladies and gentlemen, but you know, don't spend your time talking to me because I'm just an observer, really. Please. So
never just an observer. Fantastic, John.